The pandemic era seems to be drawing to a close, but the fallout from that global explosion will be felt for many years to come. Now that we are in the drawdown after the damage has been dealt, it's easier for us to see what some of these serious consequences are. Unsurprisingly, anxiety and depression are among the top diagnoses that have spiked during this tumultuous time. Problems springing from those two issues alone are a large part of what all of us have been struggling with over the last 2 years. What we are going to talk about today are 5 statistics and facts that most people probably didn't know about anxiety. If you're interested in the human condition and want to know more about how recent history has changed our collective story for better or worse, then we hope that we can give you some insight. All of our information comes from reliable research-based sources, and our intention is to make it all make sense. Please like and share this video to spread awareness of this serious social issue. Feel free to comment your thoughts and ideas below, and as always, follow our channel to keep up with us. The first fact. According to the Anxiety and Depression Association of America, or AADA, a nonpartisan research organization, anxiety disorders are the most common mental illness in the U.S., affecting 40 million adults, 19.1% of the population, age 18 and older every year. This easily qualifies as a pandemic of its own. The most common anxiety disorder is general anxiety disorder, or GAD. This disorder is typically manifested as a feeling of dread or fear about nothing in particular. Women are twice as likely as men to develop this disorder. Behind GAD is SAD, or social anxiety disorder, which affects nearly 7% of the U.S. population. SAD is no respecter of age or gender, affecting people from age 13 and up. Fear of social interactions and unwillingness to engage in everyday interactions are mostly what this disorder causes. Post-traumatic stress disorder, also called PTSD, is also an anxiety disorder. Perhaps the most talked about of the group, it is still very much a part of daily life for over 7 million Americans. Sexual abuse is the single most prevalent cause of this disorder, and the earlier the abuse happens, the worse the symptoms tend to be. The symptoms can be as varied as the people who it affects, including sensitivity to light and sound, a variety of intolerances, and aversion to even the perception of a threat being in the same room or area. Now that we've discussed what anxiety disorders are and the many ways that they can manifest, let's move on to our fact number 2. Fact number 2. KFF.org, a data-driven organization that seeks to gather statistical data about health policy and current research, reports on their website that half of adults age 18 to 24 reported depression and anxiety symptoms in 2023, compared to about a third of adults overall. This is a smaller percentage of the same age group reported in 2021, but it is still a significantly large number. While there are many types of anxiety, as we talked about before, it is a troubling statistic to think about. The pressure and fear that brings this staggering number of disorders to life is not anything to take lightly. Early in adulthood, the pressure to succeed and enjoy doing so is increasing. With the complete dominance of social media and video platforms, there is an example set for anyone who chooses to follow it, and not meeting up to those assumed expectations can be debilitating, particularly if those standards are set as minimums that must be met in order to achieve a perceived success. Women are much more prone to anxiety disorders in this age group. 57% reported feelings of hopelessness and sadness, compared to 29% of their male peers in 2021, which is the latest data available according to KFF Health News. It's not just young adults who have been greatly affected by anxiety and depression. These problems often start younger, and that has been shown by recent statistical data, which brings us to fact number 3. Fact number 3. The AADA tells us that anxiety disorders affect 31.9% of adolescents between 13 and 18 years old. Assuming that this doesn't count in the numbers for depression, this is still a very high number for that age group. Research shows that untreated teenagers with anxiety disorders are at higher risk of performing poorly in school, missing out on important social experiences, and engaging in substance abuse. The stresses and pressures of adolescence, particularly as one approaches the full-time stresses and pressures of adulthood, can be overwhelming and cause all kinds of serious anxiety. When that fear and stress catalyze into a constant state of anxiety, then a disorder is born. Perhaps unsurprisingly, there has been more focus on mental health in American high schools in an effort to stave off some of these diagnoses. It's not hard to understand how this becomes a pandemic among the youngest of us if we look at what has changed in just the past decade. There have been many changes in physical and emotional demands required for everyone to get by on a daily basis. Stresses, the increased global tensions, both social and societal, have created an atmosphere of dread that young people are most prone to feel. They don't have the benefit of experience to help them cope with that fear, and so they become increasingly fearful of their situation and can lead to some unsafe choices. This leads us directly to our fourth fact. Fact number 4. Research suggests that while substance use among adolescents has declined, drug overdose deaths have sharply increased among this population, primarily due to fentanyl-laced substances. This may not be entirely the fault of people in these situations, as they may be looking for a way to take the edge off, as it were. The increasing amount of fentanyl-contaminated substances coming into the U.S. is alarming by itself. Escaping the dark and frightening aspects of anxiety and depression with alcohol and drugs has been a practice for many, many decades. The practice hasn't changed, only the number of people choosing this path, because there are so many more people who already suffer from anxiety disorders, which commonly lead one to make these choices. In adolescence, when experimentation and self-exploration are already a natural part of getting through it all, the advent of more dangerous and deadly substances makes this a far less innocent period. For those who survive the victims of these things, the anxiety and depression become all the worse, and the cycle becomes a cruel circle. This is not an endorsement of that behavior, only a likely explanation as to how those things might come to pass in the life of a young person. And if those choices are made early in life, it is far more likely that they will perpetuate into adulthood. As terrible as that fact was, there is a light at the end of that long, dark tunnel, and that leads us to fact number 5. Fact number 5. Anxiety disorders are treatable, and the vast majority of people with an anxiety disorder can be helped with professional care. There are as many causes for anxiety disorders as there are people who suffer from them. With the right treatment from a medical or psychological professional, the symptoms can be managed to create an effective solution. Anxiety is a big problem. It can take many forms, often collectively called anxiety disorders. Many of these have been identified and categorized and have received clinical attention, so there are many ways to treat them in a professional setting. Depending upon the type of disorder, there might be more of an impact on women than men, but they can all be debilitating and create absolute chaos in people's lives. What didn't you know about this subject? Many of us have an idea, but the numbers make it more real somehow. Let us know in the comments if you have any ideas or questions about this topic, and check out our sources to see where all this came from. Most importantly, if you or somebody you know is suffering from anxiety or depression, don't be afraid to reach out. The National Suicide Prevention Hotline can be reached 24/7 by dialing 988. Nothing is the only bad thing you can do to ease suffering. Anything else is a step in the right direction if you're trying to help.